Can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for playing today. Yeah, how's everybody doing?
Great.
I see lots of brand new faces, lots of old faces, no reference to age, of course. Is that you? I knew that was you. I hardly even just heard a little mumble under the breath, right, and I knew exactly where to look. You're actually off one seat than normal today, but which I could tell. What's your name? Dana? Dana, are you fully aware that that's Joe's seat? You are now. Did you come with Joe or no? He's a friend. Okay, yeah. So you know him. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So welcome. Yeah, building community. It's fun. It's tough. It's a challenge. But the beauty is that the Buddha's teachings are very simple, super straightforward, super direct, super practical. And when you look at creating space and creating healthy communities, you don't have to deviate too far from what he actually taught. It's all right there. And when we look at creating what we call Sangha, which is community in Buddhism, and you look at creating spaces that are inviting and welcoming and open and available to all, you just have to practice embedding into a culture what the Buddha taught. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of the Buddhist people don't like that. Because people come to Buddhist places, I refer to it as a mess. If you know me long enough, you won't take offense by that. But we all come to Buddhist places, myself included, 20 years ago, as a mess. Meaning with all of our madness, all of our stress, all of our anger, all of our anxiety, all of our sadness, all of depression, we all have that going on in our lives. And then everybody comes together in a little space. And somehow we have to make it safe and inviting and work. And very often that means from what I call, in the trenches, behind the scenes, doing things that people don't like. And it's kind of that ignorance is bliss expression, meaning when people who actually use the space start to see things that we have to do to create safe spaces, they don't like it because it's not what they want. And what did the Buddha say is the root cause of our suffering? Craving, desire, ignorance, attachment, greed, anger. Those will all be acceptable, right? well-trained bodhisattvas. So creating safe space is really difficult. And, we're 17 years into this crazy journey, and we still have to work every single day to make sure that we protect this space and that we protect you, the people that come to this space. That's most important. And what that means sometimes is things will happen, things will change. And it's always for the benefit, as we said in our college group, for the benefit of others. And in this case, the others is the immediate community, the immediate Sangha. And that's a really hard thing to roll out to a bunch of lay people who are just here once every so often, once a week, once a month, first time, whatever it is. Because people come here typically wanting to feel what? Better. Peaceful. Just make me feel better. Come on, Jeff, I've been at this for 15 years. How come I don't feel better yet? You're throwing me a bunch of crap up there, right? This stuff is hard. And for me, even though we don't, I feel, present it much in a very formal, ritual, cultural, 2,500-year-old historic way of presenting Buddhist teachings, you just have to look at what he taught and around Sangha community. And I'll close this kind of morning rant with this reminder for everybody, right? That the Buddha had anywhere from 227 to 311 precepts that were put in place for the monks and nuns to follow. That's a lot of stuff, right? We just ask you, can you please just close the bathroom door? One. Since Carly's here, I got to throw some humor into it, I miss seeing that smile. It's just like, close the door. It's just one. It's not 227. It's not 311. It's one. Close the bathroom door, right? And when you go in there, put your shoes on. I don't know about you, but most bathrooms, floor is not that clean, right? You want to walk in there barefoot? That's on you. But then when you're done, please go outside and don't come back, right? So your shoes go on and you come back in here. I had no intention of even going into this direction of closing doors, but yeah, that's where we're at. So yeah, I'm going to stop there. All right, so we'll start with the meditation practice, since that's why most of you showed up. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are sitting on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're sitting, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders, hands are on the knees or lap. If you are brand new to meditation or brand new to here, you're not trying to empty your thoughts, you're not trying to go blank, you're not trying to think nothing. We're just going to sit and breathe. If you stop breathing, it's going to be really difficult for the rest of us, so please keep breathing. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable. or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. It means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen and you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. All we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And very often that present moment is incredibly uncomfortable and difficult. And this practice isn't immediately trying to fix it. It's learning to be with it and understand it. And begin to see why the present moment is uncomfortable to begin with. That present moment is the moment that we created. And that's the moment we're trying to escape from. And we get stuck in this vicious cycle of creating uncomfortable present moments, doing something unhealthy to escape from it, and finding ourselves immediately back in that unpleasant moment. This is the ignorance the Buddha is talking about. And then we run to our Buddhist thing, our Buddhist titled stuff, our Buddhist place, and we think that that place is going to make it better. This place doesn't leave with you when you walk out. You leave with the same person that you came in with. That's the person that has the ability to stop creating unpleasant moments. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter. But it's a challenge. And like I spoke about at the beginning, the beauty of Sangha, the beauty of the precepts and what the Buddha taught, whether you look at them or abide by them or not, is not the point. The point is understand the intention behind them. And for me as a practitioner, I have to look at myself and say, how am I holding myself accountable to what the Buddha taught? Am I being honest with myself, and I'm being honest with the community? As I sit here and share things with all of you, and you look at me as if I'm supposed to know something, you know? And so what does that mean for everybody? What that means for everybody is, how do you hold yourself accountable to the people in your lives? In my experience, being a part of a Sangha and a community and leading has drastically changed my life, because I couldn't even tell you how many things over the last 17 years I wanted to do that I didn't do. Why? Because of you all. So I thank you for keeping my life healthier and happier. Now the question is, can you do that? Can you be honest with your life and your practice and hold yourself accountable to the people that mean something to you, to the Sangha that you practice with, to the people that you sit with, to the family members and the friends and the strangers and the loved ones? Can you do this? Because if not, it's just a big lie. How do we bring this practice of ethical, moral conduct and behavior into our lives? That's the question. The Buddha laid it out very simply. You might not like it. You might not want to follow it. You might not want to abide by it. And you just might continue to suffer. And as I often joke, and many of you have heard me say this for years, in the old Buddha for You location, the sign on the wall said free meditation. And everybody showed up. But as soon as that sign was switched, we never did this. We should have, but they were like stickers, and then it would have made a mess. But if we changed it to say free morality class, chances are most people wouldn't be showing up. We want meditation and Buddhism and our little Buddhist circle to fix the crap that we're doing. And it won't, folks. That's on you all as a human. So good luck with all of that. It's not easy, but it's the least you can do and what you owe to the people in your lives. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just always prefer to respond to questions. I don't think I said good morning to all of you folks online, so good morning. Thanks for joining us. Feel free, as you are, to chime in, say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen, so feel free to, if you have any thoughts or questions, to put them there. But we use the rest of our time this morning, and I'll just open up to questions around meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. We'll go from there. Yeah.
I have a question. If you're practicing Buddhist and you pass away and you're reincarnated, do you come back as a Buddhist?
That's a great question. I always love your question, Nancy, because they're so practical. You know, it's like you have this incredible, if you don't mind me embarrassing you for a moment, you have like this incredible depth and like deep understanding of Buddhism, yet with this incredible beginner's mind approach that just expresses questions like that, which is great. So if I understand your question, it is if you are a practicing Buddhist and you die when you pass away, and if you are reincarnated, do you come back as a Buddhist? That's your question, right?
Yes.
I have no idea. I don't know. That's a great question. But let's look at it this way, and then I might eventually come back to your question. You ever woken up in the morning in a good mood and been a really nice person? Once in a while? Yeah, you could be. Yeah. Don't look so shocked. It happens a lot, right? You wake up in the morning and you're a really nice person, yeah? Some days. When you get to the evening time, are you still a really nice person? It's the same. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of blankness on your face. What do you think? Who else wants to play along with that?
Can be.
Can be. Sometimes.
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes, yes.
Not always.
Not always. I have missed the two of you. So, rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, whatever school of Buddhism, whatever, and I'll talk about the rebirth thing in a second, but I wanted to start with that because I think that was a perfect expression of what happens when we die. Meaning, maybe in the morning we started out and we were in a great mood and super happy to everybody else. And maybe we were super happy to people for like 40 years. And then we spent 6 months really pissed off, angry, treating people like crap. That's what's going to continue. So, a couple things about your question, very kind of technically. Calling ourselves, and this may or may not have been your reference, but I'm just referring this to everybody, saying we are a practicing Buddhist at the moment of death, and just referring to ourselves as a practice of Buddhism, as a practicing Buddhist, and again, I'm not inferring that you meant this, doesn't mean anything. My master used to always say, you could shave your head and put on a robe. That doesn't make you a monk or a nun. It just makes you a person with a bald head and a robe on. It's what's in your mind and in your heart that matters. So the technical teachings, for those who don't know, without getting into the very long story, 2,500 years ago, at the time of the Buddha, they were all Hindu. This is India. They pretty much all believed in rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, whatever you want to call it. If you walked up to somebody at that time in India and said you got one life and then you go into heaven or hell, they would have thought you were kind of crazy. Fast forward to today, you tell people, hey, you're going to be reborn, and they're like, you're nuts. So it's a very different time than it was at the time that he was teaching. And when he was teaching to an audience of people, they all already believed in rebirth, reincarnation. It wasn't some odd thing that we as Western folks, for the most part, have to try to wrap our head around. It would be like them trying to wrap their head around, wait, you're going to die and then go to heaven and that's it? That's weird. That was bizarre to them back then. You got endless gods and goddesses in the Hindu worlds and realms, and you have heaven realms and hell realms and a continuation that's just endless, right? So the reason I started with, the good mood to the bad mood, or the bad mood to the good mood, or whatever, is I think for all of us, that's what's most important, is what's in our mind and heart and how are we treating people throughout our days. Because when we die, that's what continues. Is all of our karma, all of our consciousness. The label of being Buddhist falls away. The label of everything falls away. But our consciousness, it's called storehouse consciousness, alaya vijnana, it's our karma. It's our collection of karma that we have accumulated our entire lives. Karma is not what goes around comes around. Karma is not, good things happen to good people, bad things happen to karma is what we give. Karma literally means action. We generate karma, body, speech, mind. So I want you all to think about your life up to this point. Everything you've said, everything you've thought, and everything you've done is your accumulation of karma. I don't know about you all, but I'm screwed. That's what's still rolling. You think just because I sit here and do this stuff for a minute that all of a sudden like that cancels it out? No, it doesn't work that way. You have accumulated a lot of action in your life. And this is just one physical form life. We're not even getting into what happened in the past lives. So, yeah, I don't know. But that's a start. Yeah. Thank you. Other questions? So there's a question here from Robin. Good morning. How do you be content with what you have, but still plan for the future? Yeah, it's a great question. It's a very common question. And for me, there's really a couple different ways to look at this, but always, as far as being content with the present moment, has a lot to do with abiding in ultimate gratitude for what the present moment is. I personally don't love the word being content, because when I hear the word, or if I ever say the word being content, what that at its core, at its depth, honestly means is I don't like something, but I'm going to be content with it. It's almost like saying to yourself, people often ask this question like, well, how do I accept the way somebody else is? What that question really means is you don't like the way they are, and you want to learn to be okay with it. So what I hear in that question from somebody is all they're doing is just judging everybody else, but then they want to learn to accept it. To me, it's a very similar thing with how can I be content? And again, this is just a sentence on a screen with no emotion or anything like that. So I don't know the nature of the question at all, other than when I hear the word content, I immediately want to drop into a place of gratitude for all what we would refer to as good and bad in our lives, and be grateful for any pain I may have, because that pain means I'm alive, and be grateful for the difficulties and challenges in my life, because that means I'm alive, and that means I care. So to always have gratitude for these things, removing the word contentment and just abiding in present moment. The second part of that is plan for the future. Very often, especially people who are new to Buddhism, think that, you all talk about the present moment, but what about, I want to graduate, I want to get a job, I want to have family. We have all these plans or goals you may or may not have, right? We don't even know if we're going to wake up tomorrow. Right? One of my favorite examples, many of you have heard, who drove here today? Is your car here? Still?
I hope so.
You hope so. Where'd you park?
Across the street.
In the lot that says don't park here, all over it?
Except after hours, right?
The sign doesn't say except after hours. Huh. We don't even know that our cars are going to be there. We hope they are. Now we're worried that they are. Now we're panicked that we misunderstood and actually listened to somebody else who told you something that was completely wrong. And now you're going to run and blame somebody and say, you told me I could park here, right? Anytime anybody asks me if they can park there, I always say, you're usually fine. Because usually you are. So we don't even know what's happening 5 minutes from now or an hour from now, back to your question. And so I think there's a balance in Buddhist teachings. We call this the middle path. I think it's beneficial, practical, and helpful to have a plan in place, have an agenda in place, in your mind, think about your future. But recognize that the future is going to be completely different from how you anticipated it to be. I'm pretty sure none of you 20 years ago thought you'd be sitting here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. It was not in your cards, right? But all of a sudden life happens and you end up here. So plan for the future, find a balance. And also, I think, look at what your plans for the future are. Because as you evolve, as you change, as you hopefully grow spiritually, what you think is important to you now might be completely different. So you can plan for the future all you want, but you still got to get there breath by breath. So I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
I have a question about kind of right conduct. So I know we talked about, you mentioned the precepts, and then we talked about the one precept here. But I was thinking about like how to understand right conduct. If there's a kind of general rule of thumb, maybe that looks like evaluate your own mind and like your own intentions and the potential harm that you could do, like kind of self-evaluate and assume that if your intentions are good and your actions are good and your words are good, that you won't do harm to others. Is that kind of a fair way to look at it? Because I was just thinking about, other people have their own realities and we don't
Yes.
know those. So it can sometimes be hard to kind of feel confident that one is doing right by others if one does not have that insight into where they are coming from or what their current reality is. So
Sure.
kind of like, what can we use as a guiding?
Yeah. No, great question. I often try to paraphrase things, but I'm not going to try to paraphrase that. I get it. I usually just repeat things virtually so people virtually make sure they heard it. But in essence, your question is, what can we use as a guide for morality, also not knowing what other people think? And if we just gauge our own, if our thoughts and our words and our actions are with good intention, can we kind of abide by that? I first want to point out also, just as a disclaimer here, that two things. One, it wasn't like the Buddha started, just a little background before I get to that. It wasn't like the Buddha sat down and with two buddies and said, hey, let's make a bunch of rules and then we're going to see if this works. They just brought a bunch of people together as a sangha and they realized, oh, there are problems. And they put precepts in place. And there is what's called the Vinaya. You can Google it. It's all the whole Vinaya, which is the code of conducts, right? There's what's called the Tripitaka in Buddhism. It's the 3 baskets. And you have the sutras, which are the teachings, the sastras, which are the commentaries on the teachings, and the Vinaya, which is the code of conduct. And in the Vinaya, it details very clearly the reason behind each one of these precepts. And I'll tell you again, not to make it about this place, but the theme, we spent 17 years trying to get people to understand why we do certain things, right? We've even added, once again, a list of guidelines on the door that you all will walk by day in and day out, and once after 7 years, somebody might read it. And it doesn't just say what it is, it actually tells you why. So I think it's important also, the second part to that is to understand that those were just the Buddha's things. It doesn't mean he was right. It doesn't mean his code of conduct is what's best. That was what his code of conduct was, to create a healthy community and a sangha based on their time at their place. Yes, this is a Buddhist temple. I'm leading the Intro to Buddhism class, and so I think those precepts are incredibly brilliant and helpful. To your point directly, your comment and question directly, I think, yes, all we can do for the most part is do our best to evaluate ourselves and look at our true intention of body, speech, and mind, what we think, what we say, and what we do, and how that's going to influence and impact the lives of those we encounter, ourselves included. The challenge and the potential danger there is that when we do, there's an Einstein quote, it's one of my favorites, right? You can't solve the world's problems with the same mind that created them. So here we are, these unenlightened, ignorant fools, none of you, of course, I'm just talking about myself. And as an unenlightened, ignorant fool, I'm trying to evaluate, honestly, my sense of morality. Are you pretty good at convincing yourself of certain things? Yeah, I wish you all could have seen the look on her face, right? So that's where we want to be careful. I think your intention, yes, absolutely. That's for the most part what we have. But that's why, at least in the Buddhist world, that's why sanghas are created. To be able to look at each other and say, hey, you know what? You should probably stop doing this. Hey, you're kind of borderline inappropriate behavior. Borderline lacking honesty. Borderline doing things that really aren't healthy in a community. Like, if you can't call each other out on that, your community will die. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, like I said, Google Vinaya, it's all right there. And you'll be like, well, this is no fun. But the first 5, for those who don't know, yeah, and let me just last part, and I'm not going to get into them right now, but the very first 5 precepts are to refrain from lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants. Those are the first 5. So, yeah, have fun with those. Yes?
Can I just give a real quick example of
Please.
what you're describing about
how like it was the rules like they kind of like added them and they kind of like built them up. Like,
Yeah.
For especially for the fifth one, the intoxicants. I think it was like they didn't always have that rule. It was I think there was like an incident where monks were there drinking and it was causing like problems with the whole community, and then that's when the Buddha said like, oh, we shouldn't drink, like, and there's a rule against that. So it was very like kind of
Yes.
something that they kind of built through trial and error and seeing what worked and what made sense.
Absolutely.
That's an example.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it. Yeah, I see a hand. Oh, okay, there we go. I just saw the hand. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with this idea of being grateful for pain. And like, what is the next step? Let's just say something simple like hunger. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
Why would I be grateful for the pain of being hungry? And what is that going to lead to? I don't know.
It's going to lead to food.
What about just that concept of being grateful?
Oh no, but I'm answering your second question first, which is what's that going to lead to? It's going to lead to your ability to recognize hunger. Right? Can you stand up? There you go. Right?
Are you asking me something?
Tell me your name again. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Arturo.
Arturo. That's right. Yeah. So stand up. Okay. Do you have a wallet? Okay. So you stood up.
Yes.
Can you walk a little bit?
Yeah.
So you have the ability to stand and walk.
That's good.
And do you know where there's food places around here?
Yeah.
You have the ability to get there, right? You have a wallet on you? Do you have, can you take it out? There you go. Do you have any money in there, like cash or anything like that?
Yes.
At least $1 or $2?
Yes.
Can you use that to get food?
Yes.
Yeah. So the initial craving and desire for food, that hunger, right, is followed by a billion steps. You could sit now, sorry. It's followed by a billion steps that will now take place for you to get food and satisfy that hunger. Be grateful that that craving, that ability, that thought is there. One of my favorite Zen expressions is when hungry, eat, when tired, sleep. Super simple. Now, to expand on it a little more, in case that just confused you more, which really was my intention, by the way, to expand on that is when we have any sort of pain, there's people here literally this moment that live with chronic pain and have been for a very long time. Being grateful for pain doesn't mean that you like it. It doesn't mean you enjoy it. It doesn't mean it's fun or pleasurable. It doesn't mean that you're celebrating that you have chronic pain. Grateful for it means if you have pain, you're still alive. Physical, mental, emotional pain, they all suck. The Buddhist teachings is helping us with understanding how to cut through craving and desire and greed and anger and ignorance so we can minimize and eventually remove pain and suffering from our lives. Your pain, your hunger brought you here. Be grateful for that. Yeah.
So how is eating and sleeping different from the satisfaction of cravings or the seeking of pleasure as a result of cravings?
How is
Where's the distinction there?
the distinction between eating and sleeping from craving?
From the satisfaction of cravings.
Well, if you're eating, you're just eating.
But maybe I want to eat.
Well, then you're not eating. Then you're thinking about what you maybe want to do. Then you're no longer eating. Now you're thinking about what you'd rather be eating or where you want to go eat or what you wish you didn't have to eat. I didn't say any of that. I said just eat. Most of us don't do that. We eat and we grade it, judge it, critique it, send it back, throw it away, don't appreciate it, like it, hate it. Just eat. Very different. We'll do one more question before we close. Yeah, Joe.
The question is
Oh, yeah.
more of a personal experience. You know, I took the Engaged Buddhist program, so I'm healed now. And this week, so there's a situation, I'll call it a relationship of two people that I don't want to be in that because I know the cost of it. And yet that part of me, like the adult part knows, but that part of me inside that feels left down and wounded went into reaction and jealousy and anger. And the pain was really awful. And I sat in it, you know, I wanted to medicate, but I sat in it. And after day 2, you know, I think part of it is projecting this pain I'm feeling, the emotion is going to be forever. And I know that's not true. So sitting in it and realizing that no one triggered me. It was my interpretation of that triggered me. You know, I triggered myself. Not to minimize anyone who's having post-traumatic stress, because that's what it felt like. I went back to my childhood. So just being that, and you know, there was something that happened in the Buddhist program about opening up really wide to it and feeling all those feelings. And I had a whole different experience 3 days later with one of the people in that, where I realized I'm deeply connected to this person. And how to put that all together, you know. So now that I know that it'll never happen again.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just putting that out about what you're saying about being willing to be grateful for the pain that I am causing myself, so that I can move beyond it.
Yeah.
Or maybe catch myself sooner next time. But honoring that part of me who is still there, feeling that desire, that craving to be loved and appreciated and, you know, included.
Yeah.
And in my attempt to fill it, I often abandon myself and then think I was abandoned, you know. So there's no question in that, I'm just spilling the beans, you know.
No, that's beautiful.
I'm the only one in the room that's ever done that.
Yeah. Appreciate, as always, you shared it. And I think just to highlight one thing specifically that you said, just to put in context for those who might be new, that, yeah, dealing with PTSD is incredibly real and something that the majority, if not all the people in this room experience on some level, you know, very intimately. And it's real and it's there. But the key to what you said, just to point that out, is that all of that is still, the triggers are there. We are choosing how much we want that trigger to destroy us, or whatever word you want to use right there, or affect us, or, you know, there are triggers that bring joy and happiness as well. And there are triggers that bring incredible pain and suffering. And so the practice ultimately is to see all of them as just triggers and really begin to separate ourselves from that situation, which is really what you're talking about with, you know, your two friends and observing that. And so this practice is about us becoming an observer of what's going on around us, versus what most of us have done the majority of our lives, which is see what's going on around us, internalize all of that, and think our whole life is ruined, or our whole life is incredible because of how we're responding to what's happening around us. And this practice, which I'm glad that in 8 weeks you fully have mastered, is teaching us how to gain back control, which is funny because I always talk about surrendering control, which, you know, but gaining control of our ability to respond to what's happening around us in a healthier way, which is what most people suffer with completely. We don't know how to deal with things in a healthy way. And as soon as we experience any sort of trigger that is painful, we just instantly go to whatever is unhealthy. Yeah, and then we'll close. Go ahead.
So maybe if we experience these triggers and they generate intrusive thoughts or feelings, if we question whether they're actually real or not, we don't have to worry about letting go of those thoughts or feelings.
Sure.
The thoughts or feelings will just let go of us.
Yes, beautiful. But here's one more. You don't have to question whether they're real or not. They're not real. Part of the process is exactly what you just said. So for those who didn't hear, you see, I'm paraphrasing, but you see something, you're triggered, and maybe part of it is questioning what you're experiencing or feeling or thinking at that moment. Is it real or not? And once we begin to understand that, we know that it'll go away. And my response is, you can do that, but the answer should always be, this isn't real. My response is, this is the Buddhist teachings on impermanence. This is the Diamond Sutra on it's all a dream, a bubble, an illusion. All your thoughts are just, they're not real. They're just things that fly around somewhere. Yeah.
Is it more that it's not me than it's not real? Right? Like if you don't identify with it being of you, then.
Yes. Yeah, well, that brings us to the very simple teaching, which we'll close with in the next 30 seconds of, if you just understand that there is no you, then there is no person to have thoughts. So how could they be real? If there is no you, there are no thoughts, there is no suffering. So on that, we're going to close. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, just a few quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. Always nice to see you. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Just about every night we have different practices going on in different traditions. We have quite a large recovery sangha, so I'm battling drugs, alcohol, any addiction that meets a few times a week. There's always something going on. So out of the ordinary, couple things. One, this was in the newsletter and on social media stuff, that Alex, who's been leading our loving kindness practice for God knows how many years, he's been around the temple since 2007. He'll be taking a break from that for a while. So we have a beautiful new class that will start July 5th on Wednesday nights from Bettina. She's incredible. I've known her 20 years. She was actually one of the first people I met at Shifang Temple 20 years ago in 2003. So she's going to lead a class exploring the four foundations of mindfulness, the four Brahma Viharas. And it'll be a new weekly Wednesday night class that we're just super stoked to have. That'll start the first Wednesday in July. For the 4 weeks of June on Wednesday, we're still going to meet and have a class. I'm going to lead it, so you'll be stuck with me for 4 weeks, but I'll put some sort of theme around it possibly, but that'll be every Wednesday at 7 o'clock through June. And then in July, Bettina will start. So, yeah, and other than that, I know we've got a crew that'll be outside to help garden and clean and take care of the space. So thanks for all of you who are doing that and making the space look so beautiful. I mean, outside looks gorgeous. So thanks, everybody. Be well, be safe. Buddha for you is there if you need anything, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.